Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. I have a guest that I met about a year ago, and this is our first time actually recording something or doing something big together. So, Michelle Massarini is with me. And Michelle, I'm going to let you give us a proper intro about who you are. But briefly, you are a licensed therapist as well, but you have branched and taken your expertise into something that is so important. And I'm really, really excited that we're going to talk about it. So, it's something that honestly, at any point in life or at some point in life, we all kind of go through and need a little bit of guidance on. So let me hand it over to you. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, so I'm Michelle Masserini, and I also go by the weight loss behavior coach, like very proudly. So, as a licensed clinician, I specialize in helping women change their behaviors and like overcome these limiting beliefs and really make these big shifts in their life. And I take that expertise and I literally transition it to weight loss because weight loss is really about behavior change. Like, yes, it's about changing what we eat. Yes, it's about changing what we're doing, but all of that at its core is change. And so, like, I work with women who usually have a larger weight loss goal, like 20 plus pounds, but that's just because these behaviors that we have been stuck with that have been keeping us feeling trapped, keeping us feeling powerless, we haven't been able to change them. And so, like, I help women make the changes that they can't get themselves to change, that they can't get themselves to make food wise, exercise wise, all that good stuff so that they can finally lose the weight once and for all.
Yes,
So,
ma'am. I love the weight loss behavior coach. And I love it because the focus is the behavior, like you said. And
yeah.
you're looking around everywhere. There's nowhere to look, whether it's digital media or, paper media, wherever, where there isn't something about weight and appearance and body image and all the things. And what I love about what you do is you you took your knowledge and your expertise as a clinician, years of experience working in practice, and you took that and you created a program and a whole approach that really focuses on the right way to take care of your body and to lose the weight. And the emphasis is, and I don't actually know much about what you do. So that's why I'm really excited that we're going to do it together. But I know enough to know that you do it with, like the focus is behavior, it's mindset, it's approach. It's not, well, just cut this, cut this, cut this, and you'll be fine. Because obviously, those things don't last. Like you might be able to be successful in something that you do right now, hardcore that you implement, but maintaining it is your goal and to just help people have healthier lifestyles. So how did this come about for you? What even made you start working in this niche?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. What a journey for me. I've always been in health. I think that has always been a personal, a lot of people in this sector are like, health has been so important to me. In like college, I was a group exercise instructor and I always had these dreams of I was a spin instructor, so I was that woman that was, like, screaming into the microphone and telling people, and I've always had a very active life, and it's one of these things that was always just so seamless and so easy to me, and so, actually, that really disconnected me in a way from the women that I work with now, because for me, I was never the fat kid. I was always very athletic, I was always very healthy, I was always whatever, and then by the time I got to college, I started developing some just unhealthy habits. You're drinking more, you're hanging out with friends, you're not making good decisions. And then the weight started to come on. And it was
Mm,
this like very suffocating experience for me because it's not something I ever had before. And I felt so powerless. I was like, oh my God, like I gained 30 pounds and then I just felt like I couldn't get rid of it. I did everything I could. I was like, I'll commit to whatever plan, I'll commit to that plan. And at the time I was going to school for grad school for counseling. And so then I started being like, well, let's take some of these techniques that we use in trauma and some of these techniques that we use in like helping our clients feel empowered. And why don't I just like do that for myself? And
mm.
so like most 19-year-olds, I guess, I just started walking around my college campus at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was like, you know what? I have to do something so crazy that I have to make a big shift. And it was that big shift that made me realize that, like, okay, this is unsustainable. So let me create something that is sustainable. And that was like, it's kind of like, when you invent something and it's that light bulb moment.
Yeah.
And in grad school, I just always knew, like, I'm going to be in health. I'm going to be in health. And I stayed teaching as a group exercise instructor for the last 10. I actually stopped during COVID. Like, I kept doing that for so long. And then that's when the moment like arrived and I was like, let's do this. Let's really take what I know and let's apply it. And I started taking a couple women on and it was working. And then a couple more
Mhm.
women and it was working. And then I just kind of have been growing and growing and growing from there. Like I love it. It has been such a beautiful experience, but it really came from a place of knowing what it was like to be super powerless. Like
Mm.
that is really where my roots that.
Yeah. That's such a good point is the powerless piece because I think that, I everyone starts at a place of like being in control. Actually, that's what let me rephrase that. Many people start their weight loss struggle from a place of control where things are okay, and then all of a sudden it's a slow struggle, and then before you know it, you're like, oh my god, like I lost control, like I don't know what to do, and I get here, and then you have other people who it has been a struggle from childhood, and there's never been control. So
Yeah.
really that piece, that control is so hard. And to your point, kind of linking it back to what we do as therapists, our goal is to really help people be in control of their lives, right? Whether they're coming into us because they're struggling with anxiety, depression, trauma, marriage, parenting issues, whatever it is, the goal, the desire that people come to us with is I need to know how to do better. I want to know how to be in control. I want to be a better mom, a better wife, a better husband, or whatever. And with weight, I think there's so much judgment that comes from society. So now not only do you feel like you don't have power within yourself, you also worry about what people are perceiving. Like so many other struggles that we deal with on the mental health front can be secret. You might not know that someone's depressed or anxious or having a really um, terrible time in their marriage. But when someone is experiencing weight issues, not only are you going through it personally, but it also is hard to hide. And because we live in the society that we do, there's a lot of emphasis on weight and stuff like that. So tell us a little bit about like, how do you I get, short. I don't want to share all your secrets because I want people to come find you and learn more about your program. But what are the things that you really like to teach people about? Like, how do you really get people to understand that there's a difference between doing this behaviorally?
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, the beginning of that conversation starts like, you know that you need to make changes, and I'm going to help give you tools so that you can then make those changes. But what is underneath that conversation is that there is a lack of trust that that person has for themselves. They have spent, and especially in weight loss, so much of their life trusting in external sources to get their needs met when it comes to food and when it comes to everything that helps us gain weight or lose weight. And so it's like I really want to teach women how to bring the trust back to themselves. And that first, like the whole first part of my work with somebody is helping them develop a relationship with themselves. And so I like to think of ourselves as three pieces. So we have our body, we have our brain, and then we have us right above that I like to call control center. And like it's very important for us to have effective communication between our brain and our body and us, who we are, what we want, what our values are, so that we can make sure that all those systems are working towards what we actually want to do. Like so much, I see this a lot in a lot of the women that I work with is that they know how to be resilient. And so therefore they rely on that as a strategy, but they're relying too much on that as a strategy. And then they're getting exhausted because their willpower is exhausted. And so when I tell people that, like, even though you don't think you're on a restrictive diet, you probably are. Like, if you feel like you want to break free from the situation that you're in, then it is too restrictive. It is not working for you. And what you think easy is, you probably have to dial that down like 20, 30 notches before it is actually easy. So
Hmm.
together is just like bringing that sense of self back together. Like she has to be able to trust herself.
Yeah.
And that's my favorite work. I get so lit up and so excited about that stuff.
Yeah, I love it. It's linked to identity, right? Like who you are, why are you doing this? Because I think I love your description of the external goal. Basically, like our focus is on what is it society? Like what I guess maybe explain to us a little bit more about that external versus internal.
Yeah, I mean, this is an extreme analogy, but sometimes I feel like my clients treat their bodies like it's a slave to their wants and needs, and that they don't understand. They're like, I want this outcome. So what do I have to do to generate that outcome? And sometimes that could be a lot of hard work. And that's where we have to rely on resiliency in order to do that. And that's great as a short term strategy. But when it comes to weight loss, that's a long term strategy because you want to lose the weight and you want to keep the weight off. And so we have to look at that as like, okay, a short term strategy is based on like motivation, willpower, and resiliency. And a long term strategy is based on trust, self compassion, and self esteem.
Yeah. That self-compassion is such a big piece because I think that there's a lot of, even though if it's something you want to do, you may not believe you deserve it. And those aren't always like conscious thoughts, right? Like there are some people that do have very trauma, filled histories where they don't feel like they deserve the good things. But for, I think most people, it's more just internalized low self-worth and they don't realize that that's how they think about themselves. So really what I hear you saying is it's not about if the emphasis on what you're eating and how you're taking care of your body externally, then that's not that's hard to sustain. You can't
Yes.
sustain that. But if the emphasis is on the self, on who you are, how to take care of who you are and understand why you deserve this, then that has the ability to be sustained. Is that too simple? Walk us through that.
Yeah. So I feel like, no, you're right. Cause that's the mindset shift. That is 100% the mindset shift. But I think the behavioral piece is that we're so used to tell me what to do and I'll do it. That's usually what every woman, I work with works. And they're like, whatever you tell me, I'm just going to do it. And then they don't know how to create a strategy that can support themselves consistently doing it, whatever it is. And so then I have to challenge them and say, yes, you can trust that the things I'm telling you are going to give you the results that you want. But if you can't consistently do those things, then it's not going to work for you. Like, yes, it will work in theory, but the reality is that it isn't working. It hasn't been working. It's not working today and it's not going to work tomorrow. Like, I actually just had a conversation with a client this morning where she's like, "Oh, I could meal plan on Sunday and I can meal plan on Wednesday." And I had to be like, "Okay, so I didn't help you discover this, right? Like you knew you always had this free time. So it's not a lack of knowledge and it's not a lack of motivation and it's not a gap in any of those areas. What it actually is a gap of what you think is easy isn't. And you have to dial it down so much more and really figure out what's going to work for you. I think people are just so I don't want to say desperate for the results, but when you're powerless, you can't help but be desperate. And so, like, I say desperate in a very gentle way, but it's just because everything else they've tried hasn't worked because they are just listening to other people and what they need to do versus saying, like, no, this hasn't worked for me. And instead of me thinking I'm a failure, I'm just going to make a different plan because I need a different plan.
Yeah, definitely. Why is it so hard, do you think, for people to make that mindset shift? Like, obviously, it's very, very difficult, but in your work, like, what have you found is the biggest obstacle?
Yeah, I think like with health professionals in general, we're just so used to being like, this is my problem. Tell me what I need to do. And then the doctor or the professional then tells you what you need to do. And then you just go out and execute and do it. But when it comes to weight loss, that has to last for the rest of your life. Like that's not just like, oh, you have this disease or this disorder or whatever. And now you have to make these changes. Or like, oh, eat less sodium or have less red meat or whatever. These very vague recommendations that are given to us, but this is not that. This has also been born out of a belief system that I have that we can't trust that somebody else knows what's best for us. Yes, I love doctors. Yes, I love science. Yes, I love all of those things, but nobody's going to touch my intuition. And so, how do I teach someone to come back to that intuition and just take what lands, from the health professionals and from the doctors and all of
Yeah. So, what are some of the questions that you encourage people to think about when they're trying to really figure out that us, like who you are and what you want?
Yeah, I have every woman that I work with do a values assessment. That's my number one thing because so much, and I think like being in the world of like parenting and being in the world of marriage that you are, like we become so reactive to getting our needs met on a day to day basis in our environment. We're just like, I can do this. Like okay, my son needs this, like, I'll get him to the dentist, don't worry, I'll figure it out. Or like, I'll do this, don't worry, I'll figure it out. And we rely on that resiliency as that strategy. And so I encourage women to pause between the action and the thought that's happening and say, what do I need right now? What do I need? Like, yes, you can still rely on that resiliency, get your son to his dentist appointment, do what you need to do. But why do you have to live in survival mode? Why can't you just come back to yourself and come back to your homeostasis and be like, what do I need? What is my body asking me right now? And I promise that when you're having those conversations, she starts talking back. Like, no, your body doesn't say, I need 30 grams of protein right now, girl. But it does give you an inclination of like, okay, I need this, or okay, I need that. And that's what that three-way communication, like we have to
Okay.
establish trust within that three-way communication so that then we can utilize that relationship and utilize
Mhm.
so that we do know what we need.
Yeah. So are there any patterns that you found in like, especially among women, like what is it that that need tends to be?
That's a great
It's a big
question.
question. Yeah.
No, I think that changes at every moment of every day, but
Yeah.
it comes in survival mode because we fill our cup up so much. And we fill it up being like, this is perfect, just how I like it, all filled up. And then
Yeah.
when someone else or something inevitably comes and gives another drop of water in that cup, then it's overflowing. And so that strategy works as long as nobody else comes in with water, but that's not a realistic life strategy. And so it's like always coming back to saying, like, can you get comfortable filling your day up 80% and just leaving the other 20% for whatever is inevitably going to happen? Like, yes, at times you're going to be bored or a little unfulfilled or like you don't know what to do with that. But when you know your values, you know how to then say, okay, I have this time. It's free. It's an opportunity. Let me go work on something towards my values. It becomes more exciting. Like I just had another client the other day fall back in love with cooking because once she took away the expectation of like, I gotta get this much protein, I gotta get that much fat, I gotta get this much fiber, da 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 da.
Mm.
And then she just was like, I just know what I need. Like, I'm just so happy about this. Everything's not such a big decision. You know, she's saying like, it's okay, you're gonna eat in 4 hours. You know, like she's having these abilities to like, she's using her own words to calm herself down and to get her own needs met. And that's the end game. That's the goal right there. Like so much of our weight loss issues are us just saying, tell me what I need, tell me what I need, tell me what I need. And I'm like, no, no, no. Don't ask your doctor or your whoever or your trainer or whatever. Like ask your body because she's gonna tell you.
Mm. Yeah, that makes so much sense. So really, because I'm trying to get to the like it sounds like it's just such a tailored approach because everyone needs something different. But also the goal or the focus is like stop focusing on what society's telling you to do. Stop
Yeah.
focusing on what you think you need, but like what works for you. Now, if someone doesn't know, if they're like, nothing's worked, I don't know how to do this. How do we support people to start that journey? Because I think a lot of people listening to this, and I told you before we started recording, like, I know I'm going to be asking you all these things with certain people in mind that I know that are in my life who have struggled. As some of our clients, some of them are more on a personal basis in my life, but they have struggled for so long. And so when I think of them listening to this, they're going to be like, okay, Michelle, that sounds great. Like I'm supposed to shift my focus, but what does that mean? How do I do this? And obviously if they work with you, they'll find out. But what are some like how do we really break it down? Like why is it different from the latest amazing food loss or weight loss fad?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I can't help but always go back to this idea of like, you know best. And I truly believe that. I truly believe that on an individual that level, we do all know what is best for us. And like when it comes to weight loss, it is just like we're just trying to create the outcome. Like we're literally just trying to like, I imagine this happens a lot in parenting and definitely like point me in that direction. But it's like if you want your kid to have gratitude, you're like, okay, how do I foster and facilitate? Like, what are the exact strategies that I need so that my child walks away with gratitude? And it's like, you got to meet your kid first, and we got to like see
Yeah.
how they are going to receive that. And that's really what it comes back to with weight loss, where it's like you have to take into consideration that you are an individual living in your individual world with your own individual needs. And like your weight loss has to be individualized. It has to
Mhm.
come from you. It's like I teach women how to teach themselves how to be in a system. It's like school. School doesn't teach you education. School teaches you how to learn. So like I'm not here telling women do this, do that. Here's my tips. Do these top 10 tips. Like it's not about that. And I think a lot of people get frustrated because they're just like, no, give me the tips. Tell me what to do. And it's like, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to tell you how to listen to your body, and then your body's going to tell you what to do. And when you don't have that intuition and when you don't have that relationship, it's hard to conceptualize, and it's easy for people to be like, okay, Michelle, what? But that really is the God's honest truth.
Yeah. Okay, I love that. I feel like that was really, really a good explanation because what you just highlighted is it's kind of okay going back to the parenting thing. If you have
Yeah.
three kids and they all have different struggles, or maybe they're all struggling with the same thing, you can't just go scorched earth. Well, here's the rule and everyone's going to follow it. Like, yeah, that would be great. But in reality, we have to be like, okay, well, here's how this kid learns best, or here's my sensitive kid versus my angry kid versus my I don't give a crap kid. Like the approach has to be dependent on the person. And so when we're looking at ourselves and we've got the world telling us, well, if you just do this, you will lose weight. And then we're like, okay, I tried it. It didn't work. Clearly I'm a failure. Clearly I can't do this. I'm never going to, da, 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 da. It goes on. Whereas what you're saying is, well, okay, those things might work, but let's take a minute and figure out more about you, more about why this has been a struggle. What part of this you struggle with? When you try these things and it works at first and then it stops working, why? What is it that you believe about yourself? What is it that you believe about other people? Like really getting to the meat of you and what do we do to make this work for you? So you're not even focusing on this is the thing that will help you lose weight. It's how do I help you figure out what you need to lose weight?
Yeah.
And I love that because and again, I went into this conversation intentionally not knowing what you do because I wanted to unpack it the
Yeah.
way that someone listening to this will need help unpacking it. So I feel like it just makes sense for me now. Let go.
Yeah, it's one of those light bulb moments that, like, once you understand it, and it's so funny because that's what happens with my clients. So my program when I work with them is 6 months long. And so usually the first 3 months, there's a lot of like, I'll do whatever you say, Michelle. Like,
Yeah.
so, da 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 da. Then they hit a point because their motivation's super high. And then they hit that point where the motivation isn't as high. So they're not seeing the results. They're not showing up consistently. Then they're getting frustrated. Then they're feeling like a failure. And then it's not until they understand the strategy that they can come on to the other side of that of like, oh, okay, so it's not about what I'm doing. I don't want to just focus in on what I'm doing. It's that I want to focus more on me and how do I just be comfortable? How can I be comfortable? How can I even just demand comfort in my life? Because that's the standard that I set for myself. And now that I value myself that much, I can rise up to that standard and I can demand that everything else in my life also reach that standard.
I love it. So these transformations that happen, they're very internal. They're very big in a lot of ways. So what have you seen as far as how this affects personal growth and relationships, right? So I do obviously a lot of marriage stuff and parenting and stuff like that. So how do you see these transformations affecting relationships?
Yeah, I want to start off by sharing how it affected my relationship first because I think that's
Yeah.
going to be a good spot to jump off of. So for me, the transformation that I've dealt with in the last couple of years has been very interesting. It's been more, even though we're talking about weight loss, I had to go through a lot of, we're changing our personal strategies, how we approach things, what's important, how we operate in our day to day. So once I started raising the standard for the foods that I was eating, it inevitably affected my marriage because now all of a sudden my husband is like, what is going on here? Like, I love this other woman. Like, yes, it's wonderful that you're moving towards the things that you want. And I think our spouses want to support us in that way. But I think the way that happened for me is that my husband wanted to support me emotionally, But then in the day to day, he was getting dysregulated and his schedule was getting disrupted because of the changes that I was making. And he inevitably was becoming reactive to it and didn't realize that he was becoming reactive to it until many months later and many explosions later of us figuring that out. So it changes your relationships because the more that you start to realign with what's important to you, the more you start to demand that in your lifestyle, in your everyday life, you're able to say, maybe you become the mom that instead of saying like, yeah, kids, I'll bring you forgot this from school, I'll come and bring it. They become the moms who are like, I'm at the gym right now. I'm really sorry to hear that. Good luck. Doing that. Good.
Yeah.
It really shifts our relationships a little bit too. And it shifts how we see ourselves and how other people see us.
Mhm. So, and I think that that goes with any kind of change, right? So if someone goes in for therapy because they're struggling with being really, maybe passive and they feel like they don't speak up very well and they don't know how to express themselves. Well, then they learn how to do that and they become empowered. And then now it becomes a little bit of an issue because people around them aren't used to them being so confident and strong. And so I think all good things come at a cost sometimes, right? Like, and there are a lot of benefits to us and in the sense of growth, but there's a lot of pain, that can come from growth because I don't know, life is constantly about growing. And sometimes that means we outgrow
Yeah.
certain things. And sometimes we outgrow parts of ourselves. Like there are a lot of people that'll go through life and they'll change the way their perception of certain kinds of parenting or faith or, whatever, values, things can change. And with that comes sometimes those growing pains of relationships. And so, one thing I imagine about you, just because of your background in therapy, which is why I love that you're doing this, is that you know what to look for. If something comes up, if you're working with a client on their journey with weight loss, but you hear something that indicates, okay, there's a bigger issue here, maybe related to anxiety or trauma or marriage or something like that, you can direct that, whether it's taking a minute to address it or referring out for therapy if you don't have the capacity to do it with that client. But do you see a lot of struggles for people in that identity change?
Oh my gosh, so much so. Like there is a major shift. Like I talk about boundaries with my weight loss clients more than I talk about it with my therapy clients, which has
Mhm.
been crazy. And so I feel like I've actually been on repeat this week talking about boundaries, where I'm like, boundaries feel like we are rejecting people. And so at its core, I think, especially as women, we feel very uncomfortable with the idea of rejecting people. And I have to reframe that for my clients all the time. And I say a boundary is an invitation for someone to treat you the way that you want to be treated. It is not a rejection. It is actually an invitation of the highest form. Like here you are showing up exactly as beautifully as you are, as raw, as human as you are. And you are inviting someone to engage with that version of yourself, not the version of yourself that's just like, I can do it. Don't worry about me. Like, da 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 da. Like, bringing it back just for a hot second to like my own relationship and things like that. Like, I did that. I did that. That was my role as the wife. Like, I grew up. I grew up in Long Island, and I don't know if you're familiar with that. I grew up in a very Italian American household. So, like, like The Godfather and things like that. Like, that's what my childhood felt like. And so, my identity and my understanding of what it meant to be a wife meant being the person who takes everything on. It meant being the self sacrificer. And then when I started kind of really coming into my own and demanding to take up more space, not that my husband was like, had a problem with it, but it was more just like I was doing everything and now all of a sudden I'm fostering resentment for him that he's not helping me out, but he doesn't even know he needs to help me. So it's
Mm,
like this back and forth, and that happens in a lot of marriages and things like that with the clients that I work with as well.
yeah, I love it because it applies to so many aspects of marriage, right? It's like when you have a kid for the first time, well, you've never had to divide this, responsibility. But if you do have expectations that aren't spoken, then you're going to struggle and someone's going to get angry and resentful. And until you sit down and talk about it, then everyone's dysregulated and it's just very disruptive to a functional life. But, with I put weight in this category, and maybe it's a limited category, but for me, I feel like it's in that same category of like sex. Like it's very awkward for people to talk about it. People feel very embarrassed to talk about it with the people that are they're most intimate with because they don't want to be judged or they just don't want to bring a voice, like give a label to something that like, well, they're probably already thinking this about me, but if I say it, then maybe, or what if they're not, and now they're going to judge me. Like it's so hard to say, I'm not happy with this side of me, or I need you to please help me, or I need you to work on that for you. I'm worried about your health or our future, our children, whatever. So there's a lot of barriers to break through within ourselves and in our relationships. But to the point of boundaries, I think it's also being able to say, hey, I need your help to support me. And if you can't do that, then I don't know, like, we might have to eat meals separately, like, if I'm trying to do this differently and you're not support I don't know, like, those are hard, but life is full of hard conversations. I think we just have to get over our own hang up on the weight conversation.
Right, right. I use the lotus analogy all the time. Like I'm always telling these women, like, we are in the mud right now. You have to go through the mud so that you can like emerge as that lotus flower. But like part of that mud is change, like having these shifts in your relationships, having these shifts in how you see yourself, having how you approach everything really be reimagined. Like I tell a lot of my clients like what my meals look like, and that's just meals. Like I mean, what my routines, what my meals, what my mindset looks like now versus when I was like dieting and doing everything in a different way is I had to reimagine it. And I think
Mhm.
people get caught up in like, I'm thinking about Thanksgiving because it's coming up next week and
Yeah.
but like we have these traditions that we are so tried and true and not willing to break from. And a lot of this thought is like, whose thought is that? Like I have these conversations with women where they're like, I can't do this. And I'm like, who said that? Did somebody say that to you and you just kept it on and you just wore that for the last 30 years? Like where like untangle your belief system from what like the traditions or the outside or the external is and reimagine. Like on its most simplest form, growing up, breakfast for me was like bacon, eggs, waffles. That's it. Now, those don't even categorize themselves as food to me. And I have a chocolate chip pancake every day for breakfast. Like, well, like, everything had to change. I had to be brave enough to reimagine my old patterns, my old routines, my old, like, everything, what I even thought a wife was, so that I can then show up as like my truest best self. And luckily for me, she loves health. She prioritizes health. Like the more that I fell in love with myself, the more I fell in love with just, I don't know, I got everything became like the world is my oyster versus just like,
Mhm.
oh, dang this thing or oh, dang that thing, like with limitations.
Yeah. And, I think a really good takeaway from that point is very rarely is food the only issue. If
Sure.
someone struggles with food, it's because there's more to it? And I think that we get so focused on, well, if I do this, I will lose weight. Okay, great. Yeah, that might work. And it quite often does. But the sustainability of it is typically because of something else. Like, first of all, it's probably a really hardcore diet. And so it's just hard to maintain stuff like that. But there are other reasons why we struggle, whether it is self worth or maybe we're not great at structuring our days and we're not good with self care in general. So when you want to work in this way to exercise or this way to eat, and you just generally don't take a look at your day and whether you've left any time for yourself, or maybe you don't have good habits, maybe you don't have good habits with your kids' routine, whatever. Like so much of it is like, take a step back and let's inventory, like, how does the rest of your day go? How does the rest of your week go? How do your relationships go? And a lot of the time as therapists, we're able to look at that and be like, okay, what if like, if you're here for weight loss, let's just put that aside for a sec. Let's talk about this over here. I
Mhm.
about this relationship or the fact that you stay up late scrolling TikTok. And so you wake up late and now you didn't leave yourself time to do all this. Okay, how do we correct some of those habits that
Mhm.
really could lead to this? Now that's a really simple explanation, but maybe on a deeper level, it's you are not dealing with this really stressful situation with your family or with your job, and that has left you depleted emotionally, and now you do not have the bandwidth to take care of yourself.
Yes, I feel like it's like helping women become their own not their own
Yeah.
therapist, almost in a way.
Yeah.
Like you
Yep.
want to be able to say, "Oh, this happened to me because I felt this way, and then because I felt this way, I acted in this way." And we use that as a learning like tool versus an opportunity to be mad at ourselves, be frustrated with ourselves. I think so many times, like a lot of in my messaging, I say like you're bullying yourself in your head because you're frustrated and because you're powerless and you don't know any other tools. It's like I imagine when you get into parenting and you're like, I'm just so frustrated and I want to yell because it feels like the tool that's going to make it like it's going to give me the outcome that I want, but it is not. It might, in the short term, it might make you feel better. It might make you be like, yeah, you know what, kid, just I cannot even look at you right now, you know, but it doesn't solve the long term problem. And I think so much of our weight loss, our idea of weight loss has been just do A, B, C, and you will get the results. And it's not about that. It's like you have to live forever eating. There's no escape. So how
Thank you.
a way healthier relationship with it. And I don't even know where to plug this in because I was thinking about it in our whole conversation. But a really good example in a more extreme way is like if you go on TLC and watch My 600-Pound Life. So that's a much more extreme. So obviously, if you're getting
Mhm.
to 600, 500, 600 pounds, whether you're a man or a woman, you are the most severe version of that. But every single story, I'm saying 9 times out of 10, it's trauma, it's sexual assault, it's something really horrific happened, and then it became an issue about weight. And in their situations, yes, they're using food as a comfort, as a protection, and maybe it's not that extreme. But when you're somebody who has maybe an extra 50 pounds that you need to lose, or even an extra 30 pounds, like that weight is made up of something emotional that has happened. Maybe it's not a sexual assault or something as extreme as that, but it's more just like, I'm not okay and I'm using food as some way, shape, or form to help me. And nowadays,
Mhm.
when food is products and not food, it is a lot harder to navigate and make the right decisions. And oh man, I get because
Mhm.
sometimes I have a tough time navigating the grocery store and you know, having to look at labels and be like, is this food or is this a product?
Mm.
Yeah. 'Cause it
Yeah.
really, it's
Yeah.
no, there's no more like under the umbrella of health. Like I genuinely think when somebody says something's healthy, I always ask them back, healthy for what?
Right.
Like what is
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
helping you towards? Like, yes,
Yeah.
apples are healthy, but they're not like healthy for not if you're trying to get more protein in.
Right.
So, like, so there's nothing
It's true.
anymore that's healthy. It's
Yeah.
like you have to always be like, what is helping me take that dial one step closer to what I want in a way that is sustainable to me?
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think of the people that I know who cannot pinpoint a reason, a trauma, an experience, and they continue to struggle. I think for a lot of them, it comes back to there's still an insecurity, a self worth thing. Like it doesn't have to be major. But then I think it really is the habit, like just not taking, like you've gotten so far from prioritizing this that you want it, but you don't know how to incorporate it. And when you finally can get to a point where you redo your lifestyle and you recalibrate your priorities, or you're just, even if it's a priority, you just don't know how to implement it, like just from this time to this time to this time. And it's miserable at first because you don't feel like it, but then eventually it becomes a lifestyle that is easier to sustain. But I think going back to something you said earlier, where you just get so negative on yourself, and that negativity plays such a big role that even if you have the motivation and you have the ability to implement a good system, if the voice that's like the kind of the what's the word I'm looking for? The
Yeah.
baseline. Yeah. Like if all you're doing is beating yourself for, I should have, I didn't, I can't believe, I wish, whatever, it is such a bummer that the brain can't overcome that, right?
Exactly. And then like that's the system that you're fighting against that you need to be working with. Like, it's almost like if you had an assistant, but all you did was argue with her all day long. And it's like, how are you guys gonna do anything together? You're like, no, your assistant has to work with you. So, like, how do you get that inner dialogue to start working with you? You do it by stop like e- exploiting her, honestly, because like
Yeah.
we get with our bodies, we're like, can you just do this? Can you just do that? But we're not giving anything back to like make that relationship beautiful and effective. That would be like if we just came in and every time my husband walked in the room, I'm like, can you just get me water? You know, like
Right.
how respond well to that. So your
Yeah.
inner voice isn't going to respond well to that either. So you have to take a couple steps back and find some compassion to say, ooh, I've been mean to myself lately.
Yeah. I
Oh, no.
mean, it sounds cheesy, but it's like a whole thing. It's like you need couples counseling with yourself. But it's because really it's kind of like when you are in a relationship with someone and you're like, this isn't compatible. Like we just don't talk about anything. Well, like we're rude to each other. We argue all the time. Like at some point you have to, I mean, you can't break up with yourself. So I guess you're stuck having to fix it. But until you realize that you are part of the problem, and it's not just that the other person is rude, it's that you're also rude back. That's when it changes. And so with yourself, like stop being a jerk, right? Even if it's said, it's sit down. And that's why, as therapists, a lot of what we do is like, okay, write it down. What are the negative thoughts? And a lot of people are like, well, don't talk about all the negative things because then you're going to make those happen or you're going to draw attention to them. No, we're like, talk about them, bring them up, face them, confront them. That's how you build resilience because you are facing the things that you are uncomfortable with, or it's something that's been, associated with something bad. Like face it and we confront it and we challenge it and maybe replace it. Like that's why you do it from a behavioral standpoint, because it goes back to, what a lot of us therapists are trained in is cognitive behavioral therapy, right? The way you look at the situation is going to impact how you feel and what you do about it. And so it sounds like you do a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I do a lot of like, you know, it's funny because you're talking about negative and positive, and if I kind of drive this down my client's throat. I'm like, there's no such thing as negative, fun, positive. It's either productive or unproductive. And
Oh my
that's
God.
it's that I like to bring people into where it's like, yes, going back to like the apple example, an apple is healthy and it might be a productive snack to have before a race, but it is not going to be a productive substitute for a meal. And so, like, there's moments
Good.
where
Yeah.
thoughts and feelings are fuel and they're great. And then there's other moments where it's not. And the thing with dieting is that we're
Mhm.
so used to being like, this works, that doesn't work. And like that we have to throw that out the window. That goes right into black and white thinking. Because also too, it's interesting. As a therapist, the first day I meet a new client is usually the worst day for them, or they're not in a great place. They're just like, oh, I have to be vulnerable. I have to da 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 da. But in weight loss, you meet somebody and she is on her, I'll do whatever you said. I'm ready to make the change. Like she's feeling the empowerment and the excitement. And therefore, that's why I think like diets work and they capitalize and they unfortunately prey on that motivation. And that's
Mhm.
why and we're buying into the outcome because they're such great marketers. And so we're buying into the outcome and we're trusting that they're going to give us this outcome. And then we get betrayed. And then instead of saying this didn't work, we put that back on ourselves and we're like, oh, I
Yeah.
couldn't do it. And it's
Mhm.
like, you couldn't do it because it wasn't meant for you. Like,
Yeah.
you need to do what's meant for you, and the only person that's gonna tell you that is you.
Mhm. So, it's the timing of this is really awesome because you think this is around the time where a lot of people are like, okay, after the holidays, start of the year, new me, new goals, new gym, new all the things. But
Yeah.
really what we're saying is like when you are ready at the beginning of the year, whenever that is for you, when you're ready to invest in yourself, instead of signing up for a product, instead of signing up for a gym, gym is great, sign up for the gym. But instead of signing up for a plan that is either very general or very like loose, like it's not really specific. Now, sign up for a mindset shift.
Mhm.
Sign up to work on what do I need? How
Yes.
do I tailor? How do I sit down and create a plan? It's like if you're cooking, if someone in your family is needs to eat gluten free, right?
Mhm.
Then you're not going to just wing it. You have to plan. You have to make a grocery list that looks a little different from everyone else's grocery list. The ingredients, the recipes, they all have to be a little bit more specialized. And we don't say, well, screw it, I don't feel like doing it. No, I don't. It's that you will kill your child if you don't feed that child the gluten-free diet that he or she needs. So
Uh,
we have to be intentional. We learn, we read, we educate ourselves, and we come up with a specialized plan for that kid. So it's the
uh,
same for us. Like, we may not need to be super hardcore with all the things we eat, but maybe we do need to be more careful, and we need to think about how we eat, when we eat, why we eat, health, just really health. So sit down and think of what works, what doesn't, but make it more about also your routine, your lifestyle, your habits, like all of it plays in,
yeah,
right?
and bringing it back to you. Like, you inherently cannot be a failure, but somebody else's plan for you could not work.
Yeah.
And that's okay. You don't then just say, well, I guess I'll just never lose weight. No, you have to find your own way of doing it in a way that, again, is reimagined from what you think it is. Like,
Yeah.
if if this doesn't feel motivating enough, I want to kind of end it on I want to give this like statement out there. Weight Watchers is coming out with their new, like, they have a GLP-1, which is like semaglutide, Ozempic, all that other stuff is that it's called a GLP-1 injectable and Weight Watchers. How long has Weight Watchers been around for women? Like 30, 50.
Mhm.
Sorry, my dog's clearly
You're fine.
after they're coming out with an injectable. They're a diet. They are a freaking diet, and they're coming out with an injectable. And if that doesn't tell you that, like, this is just a plan that can work, but if it's not consistently working, then it's not gonna work for you. I don't know what is. Because
Yep.
so many women come to me and they're like, how do I get someone to, how do I suppress my appetite? How do I do this? How do I do that? And it's like, no, that's going back to that mindset of like, making your body a slave to the outcomes that you want. No, work with her. Don't just like force her to like do all the hard stuff, but you're not in the mindset to do all the hard work that you need to do.
I love that. Yeah, it's so true. Okay, girl, I'm mindful of our time. So before we wrap up, tell us a little bit about the specific program that you offer, where people can find you to learn more about all of that stuff.
Yeah, I'm on all the socials, of course. So the best way to find me is weight loss behavior coach. That is my handle on TikTok. That is my handle on Instagram. I'm gonna be super honest. I'm way more active on Instagram than I am TikTok.
Okay.
Age thing.
Yeah.
And so I have a beautiful 6-month program where I work individually with women and I bring them through everything they need to know behaviorally. And then even in my program, I have someone external coming in and doing all the nutrition work because it's not to say that nutrition isn't important. You
Yeah.
definitely need nutrition. But so I have a beautiful 6-month program called the Behavioral Guide to Losing Weight and Creating Confidence. And it teaches women how to be their most confident and authentic selves in an effort to finally lose the weight once and for all. And so, yeah, come find me on Facebook, come find me on Instagram, come find me on all the places. And I'm going to send you my free guide so that you, whoever is listening, I'm going to give you my most popular habit guide, Habits for Sustainable Weight Loss for Life. That's the best way to really get a pen and paper. Cause like I'm a no business type of woman. So you're going to get through this guide and you're going to need a pen, you're going to need a paper, you're going to brainstorm and you're going to have habits by the end of it. You are literally going to have habits that you get to start because they came from you.
I love that. Yes, I will link to all the socials. You will send me the free guide, and I will put that in there. So all people have to do is click on the link. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with my with me and with my listeners. It's so, it's tough because it can be a taboo topic, right? And I think that we just kind of, like we were saying earlier, we got to talk about all the things. Nothing is sacred, because if we really want to work on who we are and grow consistently, then that means every part of us, right? And it's not about the weight. It's not about the number on the scale. It's about the lifestyle, the mindset, the self-care, the just the holistic self, right? Yeah. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Michelle. I really, really appreciate this. And then to be continued. Maybe we'll find another topic to do together.
It was fun. Yes.
Yes, I loved it. Girl, I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Really